Hey traders, it's John Fortune here of this week's Weekly Forex Forecast. We're going to blast through over 30 markets as we normally do, highlighting targets in each market for the week ahead. As we go through the markets, we're going to build out a high probability watch list along the way for next week. So I hope you're having a nice weekend. Last week we had FOMC and the DXY really failed to find any direction. We had the sell-off on FOMC and then we came back up and took out the high and we pretty much finished the week in the middle. So the DXY really went nowhere last week despite the fact we had FOMC, and it ended up pretty much in the middle of the range of last week. So a bit of a low volatility week in the DXY, and this translated into a number of the markets across the board last week. We didn't really go anywhere in a number of markets. Very often, if you fail to find any real direction in FOMC week, you tend to find the direction coming in the week or a couple of weeks after. We've noted previously how we are what looks to be in a fourth wave correction. If you look at the daily charts, you can see this much more clearer. And this looks to be a fourth wave correction in an overall ABC in the weekly chart. And what this is suggesting is that we are set for further declines to the downside at some point. But as it stands, this correction is still intact. Since the DXY may be coming towards the end of the correction, and it looks like if we count this from the low here, 1, 2, 3, I would not be surprised to see this being a fifth wave taking out the high, and then that becoming somewhat of a double top, something like that to start the next leg down towards the 88.46. I wouldn't be surprised to see that at all. So going into next week, what this means is I go into next week with a bullish to neutral bias on the dollar. I do think we could see some further advances in the DXY, but I think any advances are likely to be capped. I don't think we're going to see any big rallies to the upside in the dollar next week. So I am going to be trading the markets overall on their own merits without a strong bias in the dollar one way or the other. Next is crude oil. Now, crude oil has been on the high probability watch list for a number of weeks, and we've been trading this to the upside, and we've taken out target after target after target, and it's been a fantastic performing market. And last week we sold off and we actually reversed to the downside. This comes off the watch list because of this. I do favor short positions going into next week, even if it's not on the high probability watch list. And any correction in oil next week will be viewed as an opportunity to start to look for bearish reversals in this market, down towards the next key of support to the downside and the target set at the 57.25. Next is euro dollar. Now in euro dollar last week we were looking for this correction and a reversal to the downside, start to sell off. We did start to sell off in this market, but because of the sideways move in the DXY, you can see euro pretty much went nowhere as well. So we are still bearish on euro dollar going into this week. It's not on the high probability watch list. Any pullback in this market will be viewed once again as an opportunity to look for bearish breakouts down towards the next key of support to the downside and the target set at the 1.1827. Pound dollar, similar to crude oil, this market has been on the high probability watch list for a while, and it's been a really great performing market. Last week we started to get corrective, and you can see with your eyes we are in a sideways market condition. This market is a bit choppy. It comes off the high probability watch list. I think there are better markets next week. If you are looking to trade it, any correction towards 1.39460 would be viewed as the opportunity to look for short positions down to the next target to the downside at the 1.3758. US dollar yen, this market is structured to the upside, but it is getting a little bit choppy. This is not down on the watch list for me next week. I do favor long positions in this market, so if you are looking to trade it, any correction in this market would be viewed as an opportunity to look for bullish reversals up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and the target set at the 109.85. Aussie dollar goes down on the watch list as one to watch to the upside next week. It does look like we've had an A, B and a C, and I think we're going to see high highs in this market, and we started to bottom out. We're forming this inverse head and shoulders pattern. So very simply put, any further correction in this market next week would be viewed as an opportunity to look for bullish reversals up towards the next key of resistance, the upside of the target set at the 0.7895. New Zealand dollar, this market goes down as one to watch next week. It is slightly choppy, reflecting what we've discussed already in the DXY. However, any pullback in this market next week will be viewed as an opportunity to look for potential bullish breakouts. I'm going to be looking up towards the next key of resistance, the upside of the target set in this market, 0.7278. US dollar franc, we're currently in a counter trend correction, and you can see this choppy price action. Generally speaking, when you get this, it's better to wait for this to break out one way or the other and start trading it when you see some momentum. So this is not down on the high probability watch list next week. I think there are better markets out there if you are looking to trade it. However, the pullback into the 0.92950 would be viewed as the opportunity to look for short positions down to the next key of support to the downside, the 0.9200. US dollar CAD, last week we were looking for declines into the 1.236 and we did get this. Depending on your data feed, you either missed it by a pip or took this target out. In this data, we missed it by a pip, so we're going to leave this target on here. So any correction, as we're getting now, is viewed once again as another opportunity to look for bearish reversals in this market, down to the next key of support to the downside and the target at the 1.2363. And if we can break through here, we're looking down towards target 2 at the 1.2248. Next is gold. Now in gold, we've been bearish on this market since the weekly forex forecast of the 11th of January, and we've been shorting this all the way down from about 1850. Last week, for the first time, we started to reverse to the upside in this market. If you look at this on a weekly chart, I am bullish overall on gold fundamentally, and also technically it looks like we are in a weekly flag, and we're sitting at the bottom of this channel in this weekly bull flag. So we may be starting now a larger reversal to the upside in gold. However, you notice we're still at the bottom of that channel, so this does not go down on the high probability watch list, but I do favor long positions in gold for the first time in a while next week. Any correction in this market, therefore, back down towards the 1707 will be viewed as an opportunity to look for bullish reversals up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and the target set at the 1760.70. And if we can break through here, we're going to be looking up towards target 2 at the 1807.84. So to summarize, because of what we looked at in the DXY, there are not a lot of the dollar pairs down on my watch list this week. There are a few that I like, namely Aussie US dollar, New Zealand dollar, and also US dollar CAD. Those are my favorite ones out of the dollar pairs. And now we're going to look outside of the dollar pairs, where I think a lot of good opportunities will lie once again next week. Euro yen. Now last week we were looking for a move into the 130.59 and we took out this target almost to the pip. That was pretty much the high in this market last week. Going into this week, we've started to reverse. This is not on the high probability watch list, therefore. I do favor short positions in this market, however, next week, and any correction back towards the 130.43 would be viewed as the opportunity to start to look for short positions down to the next key of support to the downside and the target set at the 128.47. Franc yen, I mentioned last week and in previous videos, this is probably my least favorite pair, and it still is going into this week, probably my least favorite pair. I have no intention of trading this once again, and we just chopped around last week. We cover all the markets though, because I know many of you out there trading many different things. If you are looking to trade Swiss franc, Japanese yen, the opportunity, in my opinion, would be for any deeper correction towards the 116.280 to be used as the opportunity to look for bullish reversals up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and target set at the 118.06. Next is pound yen. Now we first went bullish in pound yen in the weekly forex forecast of the 21st of the 12th, 2020. And we've kept all of our subscribers on the right side of this market ever since the 139.50 area roughly. Last week, for the first time in a while, we did start to see a sell-off, and we are going into next week then with a bearish bias on pound yen. It comes off the high probability watch list because I would still like to overall take long positions once the overall uptrend resumes. However, going into next week on a short-term basis, I am bearish on this market, and any correction in this market would be viewed as a potential right shoulder. And any reversal to the downside would be viewed as an opportunity to look for short positions down towards the next key of support to the downside at the 149.20. Aussie yen down last week as a high probability move to the upside. We did take out the target at the 84.90, and it goes down on the high probability watch list once again this week. We have US dollar yen structured to the upside. We have Aussie dollar structured to the upside. This is pointing towards moves higher in Aussie yen. Any correction in this market will once again be viewed as an opportunity to look for bullish breakouts up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and the target set at the 86.28. CAD yen also down last week on the high probability watch list to the upside, and we did take out the target at the 87.68. We started to correct. I do like this once again going into this week. It goes down on the watch list. This correction is simply viewed as another opportunity to look for bullish reversals in this market up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and the target set at the 88.47. New Zealand yen, this market has been a little bit corrective, but it has started to break higher recently, and this is in line with its overall trend. I do like this market going into next week, certainly as one to watch and keep an eye on. It does go down on the watch list. The correction we're getting now is simply viewed as an opportunity to look for bullish breakouts in this market, and we're going to be looking up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and the target set at the 79.54. Euro franc. Euro franc was a pair that performed really nicely at the beginning of the year, and it came off the high probability watch list about 3 weeks ago, and we've pretty much been corrected and moving sideways ever since. It remains off the high probability watch list, but going into next week, if you are trading this market, I do favour short positions. The correction we have is viewed as the opportunity to look for bearish breakouts down towards the next key of support to the downside, and the target set at the 1.0955. Euro New Zealand, this is down on the watch list this week, although out of all of the markets which are on the watch list, you can see the New Zealand pairs are probably the choppiest. This market is grinding to the downside. We've been short on this market for a while. Any correction once again towards the 1.67230 is only going to be viewed in this market as an opportunity to look for bearish breakouts down towards the next key of support to the downside at the 1.6408. Euro Aussie, down on the watch list this week, very similar to Euro New Zealand. We have been short on this market, and the market has been coming down, but we haven't quite taken out the targets yet because of the lack of volatility in these markets. I do still favour short positions going into next week, and any correction like we're seeing here is viewed as another opportunity to look for short setups into the 1.5235. Euro Pound, down on the watch list last week as one to watch to the downside. We did take out the target at the 0.8538, almost to the pip, and that was pretty much the low in this market last week. Going into this week, I do still like this market to the downside, even though we're starting to get a little bit choppy, lacking a little bit of momentum. I am still bearish, and any correction as we're seeing now is viewed as an opportunity to once again look for bearish reversals in this market, down towards the next key of support to the downside at the 0.8488. Next is Euro CAD. Now Euro CAD over the last 2 weeks has been my favourite pair to the downside, and over the last 2 weeks we have declined in this market, and we took out the 1.4870, which was the target set previously. Going into this week, I am still bearish on this market, and it is on the watch list. Any correction as we're starting to see now is simply viewed as another opportunity to look for a break in line with the overall trend. I'm going to be looking down towards the next key of support to the downside at the 1.4772. Pound franc, like a lot of the markets, didn't really go anywhere last week. I am still bullish on this market. It is on the watch list. We're starting to pull back to the 128,490. Any continued correction into this area is viewed next week as an opportunity to look for bullish breakouts up towards the next key of resistance to the upside, and the target set at the 1.3015. Pound Aussie, very similar to franc yen. I've noted that this market has not been a good market over Q1 of this year, and frankly I'm not really interested in trading it next week. If you are trading it, however, I would be looking for bullish setups in this market, and I'd be looking for bullish reversals up towards the next key of resistance to the upside at the 1.8215. Next is Pound CAD. Last week we were looking for a move to the downside into the 1.7257, and we took out this target almost to the pip. That was pretty much the low of the week. Going into this week, it's not on the watch list. We follow a very specific set of rules to build out the watch list. But in terms of pairs outside of the watch list, this is probably my favourite one to actually keep an eye on, because I do think we see lower lows in this market. We've already started to correct, so any further correction would simply be viewed as another opportunity to look for bearish setups down towards the next key of support to the downside at the 1.7148. Pound New Zealand, this has been a very choppy market, similar to franc yen and pound Aussie. Not really interested in this market personally next week. If you are looking to trade it, I would favour bullish setups in this market if I absolutely had to trade it. Any correction in this market would be viewed as the opportunity to look for bullish breakouts up towards the next key of resistance to the upside at the 1.9616. Aussie franc, like a number of the markets we've had on the watch list, it has been performing very nicely to the upside, taking out the targets, but we're starting to lack a bit of volatility. You can see volatility drying up as we get a little bit choppy. It is still bullish, and I do favour this as one of the better markets going into next week, so it is on the watch list. Any correction in this market is only going to be viewed next week as an opportunity to look for bullish breakouts up towards the next key of resistance at 0.7271. Aussie CAD, last week we took out the target at the 0.9636, and that was pretty much the low in this market last week. I do like this market. It is not on the watch list, but alongside Pound CAD to the downside, I like those two outside of the watch list pairs. Very simply put, if you are looking to trade this market, any correction as we're having now is simply only going to be viewed next week as a potential opportunity to look for bearish breakouts down to the target set at the 0.9523. Aussie New Zealand, the fourth pair that I'm not really interested in trading next week alongside the other three previously mentioned. I am bullish on this market overall though, so if I was looking to trade this, anybody looking to trade this out there, I would favour long positions. We have somewhat of a bull flag forming. Any correction in this market, therefore, would be viewed as the opportunity to look for bullish breakouts up towards the next key of resistance to the upside at the 1.0897. New Zealand CAD, we pretty much went nowhere in this market last week, so the assessment of this market is really the same as it was last week. I am looking for further declines in this market. It is not on the high probability watch list, but any correction in this market would be viewed as an opportunity to look for bearish breakouts down to the next key of support to the downside and the target set, the 0.8884. New Zealand franc, we have been quite choppy in this market, but I do think it's a high probability move to take out previous highs and make high highs at some point in this market. It is on the watch list this week, but like all of the New Zealand pairs, you could think of them as the lower probability of the pairs on the high probability watch list. They're down the bottom of the watch list, but they're still on the watch list. So going into this week, any bullish reversal to the upside in this market will be taken as a signal to start to look for long positions up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and the target set, at 0.6734. And last but not least, CAD franc. This is a market that has been performing very nicely to the upside, taking out the targets, and it's been on the high probability watch list for a few weeks now. Last week, I was looking for further advances to the upside, and I do like this market going into this week. I liked it last week, but we just didn't go anywhere. So very simply put, the assessment in this market hasn't really changed since last week. Any further correction in this market is only viewed as an opportunity next week to look for bullish breakouts up towards the next key of resistance, the upside and the target set, at the 0.7503. So that is it for me for this week, guys. This is the full watch list that I'll be concentrating on next week. These are my preferred pairs going into next week. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please let me know by liking, sharing and subscribing. A big thank you to everybody who does that on a regular basis, and a big thank you to everybody who comments on the channel, who has subscribed to the channel and who shares this content as well. I want to wish you all a fantastic weekend, and I want to wish you all the best in your trading next week. The only thing left to say is take care and don't forget to trade safely.